So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching from New York, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. In New Jersey, this nation has never been and never will be ruled by kings. In Virginia, our time to lead has arrived. And in California, after provoking the bear has roared back with record-breaking turnout. Historic numbers poured in as millions of Americans made it clear exactly how they feel about Donald Trump's presidency. A powerful response that has crowned this man as the new mayor of the capitalist capital of the world. I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And perhaps worst of all, I refuse to apologize for any of it. Zoran Mamdani united a diverse coalition of voters who had long felt invisible, unseen at least by politicians. Don't be fooled by the cheeky name. Hot Girls for Zoran became an organizing force, knocking on millions of doors. At this Brooklyn watch party, the crowd erupted in cheers when the results came in. "This is amazing. It's unreal," said Ariel Friedlander, known on stage as Harsh Babe. She remembers when Mamdani was the only politician to attend an event protesting Trump's attacks on trans people. He was polling at just 1%, yet he rearranged his entire schedule to stand with trans New Yorkers. That's when I started believing in him. The first time I ever had faith in a politician like that. And now he's not at 1% anymore. He's actually going to be the mayor. It's unbelievable. So what can we learn when Democrats win from the left in New York, from the center in New Jersey across the water behind me, and further in Virginia? First, notice what these victories share. Yes, the courage to confront Donald Trump, but also an unyielding focus on the economy, tackling the cost of living crisis, soaring utility bills, housing expenses, and healthcare costs that create economic insecurity for countless families. Even Trump acknowledged Americans were feeling the effects of the longest federal government shutdown in history. Polls showed the shutdown hurt Republicans badly, and though Trump claimed he wasn't on the ballot, his presence loomed large. In reality, his name may as well have been printed on every ballot. Democrats used it to energize their voters. When the president threatened to withhold federal funds if Mamdani won, nonprofit CEO Murad Adavi told me, before crossing the street to the new mayor's Brooklyn celebration, that now it's New York's turn to fight back. Now's the time to fight back and to do it strategically. New York contributes far more money to the federal government than it ever receives in return. So are you saying New York could strike back by withholding funds from Washington? That's one possible approach. It's a strategy both the city and the state should seriously consider. Mamdani's victory in New York felt like a knockout moment for his supporters, but for the Democratic Party, it's likely just the beginning of a deeper debate, one that reflects a party still wrestling with its identity. All these Democrats agree on the problems: rising rents, skyrocketing grocery prices, and unaffordable childcare that create economic insecurity for countless families. The question is not what the issues are, it's how to solve them. There's some overlap in policy ideas. In New York, Mamdani talks about rent freezes and free bus fares. In New Jersey, Mickey Sherrill is pushing to freeze utility rates. And in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger wants to raise the minimum wage. But those 2 new female governors are also focused on building a pro-business environment, offering grants to employers and encouraging competition, language that sounds far less socialist. There's also a tonal divide. They strike a more pragmatic chord, while Mamdani comes across as distinctly progressive, so much so that even senior Democrats chose not to endorse him. Still, he's begun sounding more practical too, and some on the party's left wing now worry they may end up disappointed. Thanks, Ayushka. Earlier, I spoke with 2 veterans of American politics from opposite sides of the aisle: David Frum, political commentator and former speechwriter for George W. Bush, and Bob Shrum, longtime Democratic strategist. I began by asking whether Zoran Mamdani represents the future of the Democratic Party. "No," Frum replied. "He's part of the future, but what we really saw last night was a complete rejection of Donald Trump. In New Jersey, a race thought to be close wasn't. In Virginia, Democrats won seats they weren't expected to. It was a clear repudiation of Trump. What happened in New York was voters saying, we're done with old politics and old politicians, we're ready for something new." So is Mamdani an Obama 2.0, a fresh figure ready to redefine Democratic politics? No, Frum continued, he comes from a different place. Mamdani drew on the emotional energy of the anti-Israel movement that's gained traction in the U.S., much like in Europe. He harnessed that momentum and broadened it with other popular issues. But as the race tightened, he leaned back into those anti-Israel themes that struck a powerful chord. Bob Shrum responded, that might have played a role, but his victory was really about the cost of living in New York City. This election was a referendum on Donald Trump. Republicans want to make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party, but Trump is still the face of the Republican one. In Virginia, even a Democratic attorney general candidate tarnished by violent text messages won by 5 points. It shows this was a rejection of Trump above all. And when Mamdani calls himself Donald Trump's worst nightmare, Frum smiled, "I'm not sure what Trump dreams about, but something tells me he might actually enjoy this fight." "Obviously no, for Donald Trump this couldn't be better," said David Frum. "As Bob mentioned, the more an election becomes about Donald Trump, the more trouble the Republicans are in. If the 2026 congressional elections are free and fair, Republicans are heading for a poor showing, certainly in the House and possibly in the Senate too. Trump has 2 strategies. First, to make sure the elections aren't free and fair, and second, to portray Democrats as wild, dangerous, unacceptable, and full of bias. In a sense, Mamdani is his perfect counterpart because the far left and the far right always end up mirroring each other." Bob Trum replied, "Well, one thing we haven't discussed enough is how Mamdani managed to create a deep emotional connection with voters in New York City. That's something Democrats used to do regularly. Think of FDR, John F. Kennedy, Barack Obama. It's a skill the party has lost in recent years. The question now is, in 2026 and 2028, what kind of Democrats can rebuild that connection?" Frum added, "Trump's real gift was his ability to build a broad coalition and mobilize people who don't usually vote in midterms, but next time it might not even be Trump on the ballot." "Well, he'd certainly like it to be," Frum continued, "but here's the thing. Trump knows how much trouble he's in. He realizes his only path to safety is by undermining the democratic system itself. So when I say Democrats will do well if the 2026 elections are free and fair, that's not a small disclaimer. I'm genuinely worried they won't be. The president wakes up every morning thinking about how to make sure those elections aren't fair." Shrum then responded, "I think Democrats in 2028 will be pragmatic. They'll look for a candidate who can win, someone who represents core values and connects with ordinary people, someone who can convince voters they genuinely care and will actually fix the problems that matter." "Do you agree with that, David?" the interviewer asked. "Or do you think a candidate like Mamdani could dominate the conversation and pull all the attention his way?" "Well, what I truly hope is that Democrats take their cue from people like Abigail Spanberger, a former CIA officer who defended this country and just won the Virginia governorship. That's the model for the party's future, a coalition that stretches from Bernie Sanders to Ann Romney, not from one extreme to the other." Finally, the host asked for predictions. "Do you think the next Democratic presidential candidate will resemble Zoran Mamdani or the moderate governors who won in New Jersey and Virginia last night?" "Well," Frum said, "I'm not a Democrat, I'm an anti-Trump Republican, but if I had one piece of advice, it would be, pick someone who learned politics in a competitive state. No New Yorkers, no Californians." Bob Shrum smiled, "I don't think geography matters. What matters is connection. Whether the candidate can convince people that care, that they'll do something about their problems. You can't just run an anti-Trump campaign, especially if Trump isn't even running in 2028. You've got to tell voters what you'll do as president and why it matters to them." "Okay," the interviewer concluded. "David Frum, Bob Shrum, that's all the time we have. Thank you. Thank you."